We're back.
Yo, MC Starman here with Diana Robinson.
Hello, hello.
How are you doing, Day?
I'm good. I'm good. This has been a fun connection time, so I'm having fun nerding out over the stars and excited to share with you guys some fun content.
Well, we're gonna start with a celebration.
Oh, yeah.
We hit 400 subscribers. Thank you, thank you, thank you for subscribing the channel. If you like what we put out, passing it on is really important, and so it's a minor step in the right direction. Yes, 400, it's not much, but thank you for supporting us and thank you for subscribing. And we're here to do a show on Mercury Retrograde, and we're calling this show Mercury Retrograde, Learning the Lessons of the Trickster. So this is the healer and the dreamer astrology, alchemy, dreams, and Jung. The healer and the dreamer weaves an insightful tapestry using astrology, alchemy, dream work, and the analytical psychology of Carl Gustav Jung to bring clarity to the path of self-realization. Blah, blah, blah. Here we go. So, what do we have coming? So, the important dates Mercury Shadow period begins today, and we're going to look at that chart. So, that begins on August 21st at 24-degree Virgo. Your turn.
Yeah, and then as it continues on, Mercury will hit 8 degrees of Libra on September 10th, and then it will start to perceivably go backwards. So the retrograde period starts September 10th.
Mercury, the inferior conjunction, which is the key in the retrograde period. This is the difference between the Prometheus and the Epimetheus phase of the Mercury retrograde, and that conjunction is very, very important. Then we have.
And then on October 2nd, Mercury will go backwards or perceivably backwards all the way to 24 degrees Virgo again, where we're at today. So it's August 21st, it's at 24 degrees Virgo, and it'll go all the way back to this exact point on the 2nd of October.
And then we have on the 17th, it will reach back to how far it's gone. So that's will clear the shadow period. And then Mercury superior conjunction comes with the sun on
November 8th, which is also a big, beautiful lunar eclipse, full moon in Taurus. So it's going to be a potent day.
There's some really powerful full moons and new moons coming up. But we're going to talk about that in our Soli Luna inspiration videos. But this is about Mercury retrograde, a special show for you. So what do you understand about Mercury retrograde, and how do you feel about Mercury retrograde?
I think there's Mercury retrograde in a couple components. I know first I learned about it from trying to understand charts. So when I look at Mercury retrograde, what I understood is there's this like reflective period, and sometimes people have a lot more inward turned mental communication and mental state. And then on a world level, there's always been this talk about be cautious and make sure you don't start any new projects. And I'm excited for us to get a little bit more into depth on that, because I think it's not as simple as that. But yes, there is this cautionary period or this more introverted period that I've known it to entail.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into details with that. So this archetype of the trickster, why does Mercury associated with the trickster? And what is your relationship with the trickster? How do you feel about the trickster?
The trickster. I always look at Mercury as the communicator or the connector between the masculine and the feminine, or like the light and the dark. And the trickster can sometimes, maybe astrology aside, the trickster is someone who's usually, I think of a lot, when I first learned about the trickster, I learned about Loki, which is Norse mythology. And the trickster was always doing the will of the gods. And usually it was in a good manner for a good outcome, but it didn't always have a good action involved.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this like action that's not always good, but then it is for the best outcome in the end. That's kind of what I have with it.
We'll explore some of the archetypal structures of Mercury more in details. We got some slides for you that we're going to do. But the tricks, so we associate Mercury retrograde with a bad time. Mercury retrograde, or if you just replace the word retrograde with review, Mercury is the communicator god, right? His responsibility is to unite the sun and the moon in a sacred marriage together. So he's kind of a priest. A name that we use for him is psychopomp, the guide of souls. So Mercury, if you're not going in the right way, or if you think you're not going in the right way or whatever, Mercury tricks you into getting to be where you need to be. And so sometimes it's messy, and sometimes it seems like I'm going off course, but then it's exactly what Mercury needs for you to get to learn the next lesson. So then in Mercury retrograde, really being intentional and having a relationship with Mercury in terms of, paying attention to the trickster, a good journaling practice, during the period of Mercury retrograde, a real, important meditation practice, because then you can get some real insight into how to work with the trickster archetype. Also paying attention to that sun and Mercury conjunction. That's the key point. But let me show you on the table, why do we say, does Mercury actually turn retrograde, or does it move backward? And so it's at 24 degrees right now, right? And it's going to be going to 8 degrees. So why? And then it's going to turn retrograde. So why? So from the perspective of the sun, Mercury turns around the sun, right? So that when it passes 23 degrees elongation, 22 degrees elongation, so that means 22 degrees away from the sun will be in Virgo. This Mercury will be 23 degrees away. And then now, from our perspective of the Earth, it looks like Mercury's turning retrograde. It's turning backwards. But really, it never goes backwards. It just looks, from our perspective on the Earth, it just looks like it's going backward. Does that make sense?
It does to me. I'm trying to look on the screen and see if that looks. So it's like if this, just gonna play with moving these planets, because they're all going in a circle, right? Or ultimately a spiral up. If that was the center, what Martin is saying is that we're looking out at the sun, let's say. We look at the sun every day, ideally. And Mercury's going around the sun. So it's going forward. And then as it goes behind...
the other way. It goes the other way.
Okay.
Yeah, like that.
And then it looks like it's going backwards. But then it comes all the way around again. So in this period where it's kind of going behind...
Exactly.
It's going to look like it's going backwards.
And so then when
that looks better on the screen or not, it seemed like it could, but
that's all right. That's all right. Main thing is so. But then when Mercury comes to that conjunction with the sun, so that the sun, Mercury, and the Earth are in direct line. That's the time where we get the indication. So at the beginning of Mercury retrograde, we pay attention, and then at the conjunction of the sun and Mercury, we get this indication, and then in the rest of the Mercury, anyway, we'll show you that. So did that make sense?
it did to me.
And okay, so Mercury archetype. So Mercury is the ruler of Gemini and of Virgo. So when Mercury turns retrograde, he'll be in the sign of Virgo, in the sign of exaltation. And here we have Mercury, the glyph. So the glyph of Mercury, we have the sun and the moon and the cross of matter. and all the different versions of Mercury here, you know. So at Mercury is hermaphroditic, and it's the guide of souls. It used to take the souls down to hell, so it's the guide of the dead, and it's the sage, and all of the different manifestations. Here, see, look, the trickster right
Oh,
there.
yeah.
How cute, huh? And so that's a very neat little picture of the mercurial archetype.
I like how there's the sun and the moon. It is in ancient astrology, it hasn't had a feminine or masculine connotation. It really has been connected to both.
Well, it's hermaphroditic, and
Yeah.
yes, the sun and the moon, and then here's another trickster on the other side too.
Mhm.
So that's the other sign, and then we have,
Just wanted to make a quick
yep,
correction. There's when Mercury goes retrograde, it's actually in Libra, but then it goes back to Virgo to grab maybe something that's missed.
okay,
Yeah.
yes, that's right. Mercury is in Virgo right now.
Mhm.
Okay, and then here we are. So this is the alchemical Mercurius. So Mercury is the rebus. It's the prima matera that puts all the other planets together into the 3 and the 4, and the dragon of alchemy. And so this is a picture of alchemical Mercurius. This is also here another picture of alchemical Mercurius with his cowboy boots and the 3 plus the 1. So Mercurius's symbol is the unity of the sun and the moon, and that big monster is Mercurius in alchemy. And then we have again the sun and the moon in unity, the 3-headed snakes, the phoenix of transformation, the moon, and then we have the alchemist trying to tame Mercurius in his healer, so the caduceus, the 2 snakes, and the staff of the medicines, and you see the wings of the phoenix and the transformation process and the unity of the sun and the moon. So Mercury, quite an interesting, and then we had a little Mercury retrograde glitch there in our in our
Right.
flow. Yes, we have to acknowledge Mercury in that. So then there's a lot of meaning wired into Mercury. It is a very important, myself, I didn't really fully understand how the importance of Mercury in my chart, but also in transit, and in terms of what Mercury is responsible for. So the healer and the dreamer astrology is about the union of the sun and the moon, the sun being the healer, the moon being the dreamer, in a sacred marriage. And so in reading the work of Carl Jung, the Mysterium Conjunctionis, and his alchemical work, started understanding how important Mercury is in the transformation process. And so Mercury retrograde goes 3 times retrograde in the course of a year. And so this is our second Mercury retrograde this year, and very important time to tune in, especially with how much importance what we're going through in these times. Huh? But do you have any experience of do you see a difference in people during Mercury retrograde usually?
I find there's a lot of like slowing down and checking in, a little bit more introverted. I try and take a little bit of time off during that to take that time for myself too. It's definitely that, like, especially here, I feel like life can be so fast and full and our minds are racing. And Mercury kind of adds this layer of slowness and reflection that I think is really a beautiful asset in our very fast-paced life here in North America.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, go all the time. So paying
Mhm.
attention. And yeah, I feel really inspired usually to dive into my practice during Mercury retrograde. It's a really
Likewise.
good reset time to really slow down. Go ahead.
I find it exciting and interesting to always watch where it goes retrograde too. So right now it's starting its shadow period in Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury. And so there's this analytical potential to be really thinking and communicating in a bit more of an analytical way, and pulling in our true self or our true work and showing up for ourselves in a different way, or being aware of where we need or want to show up for ourselves in a different way. And then as it crosses that threshold into Libra, Virgo's kind of the completion of the 6 first signs of developing self. And then Libra is starting to make relationship and acknowledge working with the other. And from what I understand, Mercury in Libra is a little bit more diplomatic. It sees both sides of things. It's really good for perspective and judgment, and really weighing both sides of the scales to see what best serves. And so it's going to be a neat dance between self and other again, which I feel like it's been a theme a lot this year as we do these videos.
Mercury in Libra, though, has a real hard time making up its mind what it wants.
That can be true.
That's a drawback to it.
Yeah.
So let's look at some charts together here. We got 6 charts for you. We got today, well, you know, so the 21st, whenever you get to see this. And as we get started with the Mercury retrograde, so Mercury shadow period in Virgo here, it's in square to the moon and in opposition to Neptune, forming a T-square. So a Neptunian T-square, it's kind of foggy, and Mercury will make a few different oppositions to Neptune, and we'll see Neptune playing a very important role. The other thing too is we have a grand trine. So then we had that Mars ingress into Gemini. We did a beautiful video. Now Mars will be in the sign that Mercury rules for the next 7 months. So we'll be paying attention to the relationship between Mars and Mercury. Mars and Mercury are in a grand trine with Pluto. Also Mercury, Uranus in a grand trine with Pluto. And so Mercury is the individual mind, Uranus is the universal mind, Pluto's death and transformation. So a lot going on in our psyche right now, and then, you know, really feeling tired, and the influence of Neptune. I don't really want to have to deal with the material world at all. Interesting. As Mercury reaches this shadow period, we also have a Sun, Moon, Pluto, finger of God, a Yod. And so lots of very important things going on, questioning, life questioning. Am I in the right place? Am I doing the right thing? Am I in alignment with, you know, what I'm here to do? So that's the shadow period. And then Mercury will turn retrograde on the 10th. And so then when Mercury turns retrograde, we have a sun, moon. It's right before the full moon. And that full moon, that Pisces full moon, is in conjunction with Neptune. So again, a very strong Neptunian. And then we have a Sun, Uranus, Pluto grand trine. Also, that's going to be very significant. So that's the first. That's when Mercury turns retrograde. That's the 10th. Want to keep track of those dates. Then we go into the conjunction of Mercury and the Sun, also in opposition to Jupiter, Neptune. And so then that Neptune realm, the quest for redemption, and then also a grand trine with Venus, Uranus, and Pluto, and the this conjunction of Mercury retrograde with the sun. That's going to be a key point in the whole thing. That's the 23rd.
So almost the first day of fall, if you're following, oh, it's almost after the equinox, I guess we could call it.
Right.
It's also conjunct Venus.
Conjunct Venus.
And and it's going to be ruled by Venus, as Mercury and the sun will hit at 0 degrees of Libra, which is ruled by the Venus.
And all fall long, Mercury and Venus are going to be really close together till they conjunct together finally in November. So that we're going to be taking a big look at. So Mercury does pass Venus. So there's the first conjunction of Mercury and Venus that comes on this, before October 2nd. And that's a very action-packed. We got Mercury. So now Mercury is turning direct again, and it's in square to Mars and Jupiter and Neptune. So again, that Neptune, and then that Moon, Sun, Jupiter. So that should be really high energy. And we got that Saturn, Uranus square that's kind of involved. And Uranus, Pluto, Mercury with Jupiter, here that's called a grand kite here. So with, so now we're getting into some territory, lots of grand trines, grand kites, lots of really amazing energy all fall long. You can look at our video that we did a little time back on the fourth wave of the Saturn-Uranus square, which is the dominating alignment. And of course, Mercury will play a very important role in that. How you been feeling all of this energy yourself, especially that, so ever since Mars and Uranus came into conjunction, then we had our full moon, and then now the sun is entering into Virgo, and then Mercury will go into Libra, and all, so there's a lot going on. How you been feeling? How is it out there in the world for you?
It's been good. I know I guess it's still that wrapping up of Leo season. I've definitely been more focused on my internal, my self process, and I feel like maybe it's my projection, but I feel like I feel society in a reflective period where yet again all those planets are retrograde in our outer realms too. Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, Jupiter are all moving retrograde, and Mercury's going to join them, which might make that a little bit more personal and might be more relationship to society when that comes along, makes aspects.
We're being real tricksters in this one. There's so much information.
So much.
But I think that the Mars coming into Gemini, and
there's
Mars,
going to be a lot more information. There's going to be a time of a lot of information coming out, I bet.
I think the pace of life is going so fast. All I can do is run around to try to keep up with everything that's our demands on myself. So then with this Mercury retrograde, I think a big reminder from the trickster is to take time for yourself. Resource yourself, slow it down. Again, Mars is going to be in Gemini for 7 months. There's no way we can withstand all of that pace. And so you're learning to slow it down. It's going to be a big lesson of the trickster as we move forward. And then we had a beautiful question, and I made that mistake again.
When we were going over those charts just now too, I noticed how Mercury makes a lot of aspect to Mars in the beginning half, and then it goes and connects up and waits for Venus to catch up, and then makes a lot of connection to Venus. So it's that trickster playing and connecting to both the masculine and feminine within us, the action and the need for receiving. And I think that would be interesting to witness and also be aware of, that the first half could be a little bit maybe more action packed, and then as Venus comes along, noticing what we need to receive, and it's all making aspect to Pluto, which could bring up a lot of transformation.
So we had a beautiful question in our last video from my friend Anna. Anne also, who is from Williams Lake, a really good friend. When I started my astrology career in Williams Lake, and was coming to all my workshops. Thank you for being such a great supporter throughout the years. And she said, I'd like to know more of the details of what a grand trine entails exactly. You
Great
mentioned
topic.
that communication would be heightened between the planets in the trine. Can you add any details to that? And because all of the chart that we just looked at all have grand trines in them. So what is your understanding of a grand trine?
Well, first and foremost, a grand trine shows the three elements and where they connect. So every grand trine usually is connecting the three different elements. So there's a harmony of understanding and flow. Those three signs will have the same elemental feel.
So if you look at the table, here's the air grand trine. So you can see
the inner colors here.
And then you got the fire grand trine. So here, fire, air, earth, all of the elements are joined together by 120 degrees. So earth goes from Capricorn, Virgo, Taurus. That's the earth grand trine. So then when you have a grand trine, then you have three planets in earth signs. That's an earth grand trine. We're playing with some air and earth grand trine in the next few months. And so air grand trine. So then the grand trine, these three planets activated in three 120-degree angle, will have a superior ability to communicate. When you have a grand trine in a chart, like a lot of really good musicians or great communicator will have a grand trine in air signs. Grand trine in earth signs, super manifesting. Grand trine in fire, really amazing intuition, fiery intuition. Grand trine in water sign, great compassion and impact. And also grand trines bestow gifts in a natal chart. They're also, it's a bit of a curse too, because one is so talented that he would rather stay in the grand trine than do the difficult work of integrating the dark aspects of one's personality. So then in that sense, it's easy to hide behind a grand trine. So in that sense, it's that it's not, it's not so conducive to doing the hard work of integrating the shadow, but in a positive way, it is incredible talent. And so that's in your own chart. And it's the same thing in transits when we experience a grand trine in an air sign in the now, in the present, that whatever planets that are included in that grand trine, and however that grand trine touches your own chart, then you're going to have great access. Air grand trine, amazing time for communicating, amazing time for writing, amazing time for thinking things through. An earth grand trine, great time for manifesting things, for making things become real into the earth. And so water, really emotional time. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Yeah, like right now with Mercury and Virgo, it's making a trine with Uranus and Pluto. So for this time period, while it's still in Virgo, this next week here, we could see a lot of transformation of how we think and higher understanding. But then with that Mercury review, I question if it's all going to come for renewal again next month. I don't know if there's been big changes in your life, but they may come up for a reevaluation again in about a month.
Well, again, I think that we're loaded with grand trines all fall long, and then we have the T square, that square between Saturn and Uranus, and at some point the Saturn and Uranus square lines up with the grand trines as well and forms grand kites at quite potency. So I think that it's easy to see the tension that Saturn and Uranus bringing together, and then there's the ease of flow. So it's a very, again, it's easy not to pay attention to the shadow and the integration of difficult times. We need to create structures that allow us to regain our sovereignty, and then these grand trines will really help in that. So I think that really adds a beautiful tone to fall.
I love that.
And Mercury will really facilitate us in focusing that energy into, making it real into our lives, which is really important, right?
I hope that makes sense for the question about trines, Anne. And if anybody else has any questions, feel free to comment below. It's fun always getting to answer questions and dive into the parts that are popping up for you that you want to understand more.
Cool, really fun. And so that's our question. And then here's our important dates again. August 24th, the shadow period begins. 21st. September 10th, Mercury retrograde gets started at 8 degrees Libra. Then the inferior conjunction on the 23rd, really important time for assessing the direction that I'm going through. Then Mercury station direct on the 2nd of October. So now we're really into fall mode. Things are going to get going again. And then clears the shadow, returns to 8 degrees. You know what that means basically is that if you have any planets between the 24th degree of Virgo and the 8th degree of Libra, if you have planets between those, you're going to get 3 conjunctions of Mercury over this, month period there. And so, look at your chart and see any planets between 24 degrees and 8 degrees, you'll get some Mercury action in your chart. Also, in the, in the, I guess it's the cardinal and the mutable signs, right? At the end of mutable signs and at the beginning of cardinal signs, you'll get triggers of Mercury 3 times. And then we go through the end of the cycle is a superior conjunction. So when Mercury is now in the front at the first conjunction, then Mercury ends up at the back of the sun at the superior conjunction, and that's the beginning of a new Mercury cycle. Okay, day by day healing, nutrition focused holistic health coach. Reach out for Diana. It's always nice to have you along on these beautiful little journeys that we do. And Martin Comtois, MC Starman, and this is the Healer and the Dreamer Astrology channel. Please subscribe and take good care of yourself.
That new moon of Virgo is coming up. A lot of self-care can go a long way right now.
Absolutely time, and plus also fall, change of season. We were having a little chill in the air there. So boost up the immune system. Virgo is about healing and being well grounded in the earth. Take good care of yourself, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. Much love.
Whoop, 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 whoop.